You are listening to the sweet sounds of Mr. Patrick Chavez playing that guitar. He and I sat down just a couple of days ago to play some duo guitar and talk about his story as a guitarist. Patrick's seen quite a bit of the world through his instrument, and it's a beautiful thing as a musician to consider dreaming about traveling and seeing the world through the opportunity to play your guitar and make a little money along the way. Patrick, as a matter of fact, is back on an airplane on his way to Bahrain and will be fulfilling an 11-month contract out there before making his way back to New Mexico. And it was so cool to talk a little bit of shop and talk some stories about playing guitar on the road and what his story was, what his relationship with the instrument is. We initially met at the jam session over at Ben Michael's in Old Town, which happens every single Wednesday from 7 to about 10. And it was many years ago until Patrick came back just a couple months ago. And it's been so neat getting to develop a friendship and hearing him play all these weeks and all these months. I know you're going to enjoy this podcast as well as some of the music that we got to perform, play, and at the end listen to as Patrick serenaded us with some beautiful classical music. So I'm going to stop talking and get to a little bit more music. Then we're going to jump right into the podcast. So please help me in welcoming this wonderful guest today, Mr. Patrick Chavez. All right, now we're getting excited over here with Mr. Patrick Chavez.
Yeah, man.
We're talking about all kinds of stuff in regards to being a live musician. First of all, welcome to Our Talk Music, man. Thank you for being on the podcast. And yeah,
thank you, man. That's cool. Fun stuff.
So tell me a little bit about what you've been up to in the past couple of years, man. You're 45 years old.
Yep.
And you've been playing guitar as your profession for all your life, you'd say, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So part of, I think, what I
trying to at least.
right. As well as at the end of the day, making a living doing it, right? And we were talking about some of the odd jobs that you've had to do and the weird situations that you've been put in from it. I met you a long time ago, when you came to the jam session, but most recently, after you've been home kind of hanging out, waiting for a contract to kind of come up.
Yep.
And so tell me what that's been like and what that world is like,
Yeah, well, basically your vacation starts when you're out of work. If you're a musician, at least like that. Music's a great thing, man. I've been trying my whole life I was like, how do you do that? I didn't have my family had a business in construction, doing tile work and stuff.
Oh, wow.
And it was a lot of hard work. So I spent a lot of years trying to figure out, how do you play music for a living? How do you do that?
Yes.
I want to just do that because it's I just like doing it. And then little by little, you learn about what it's like to do gigs and, try and break into music scenes in different areas. But the last 10 years, I've been working overseas in the Middle East and Asia.
In the Middle East and Asia. All right, so be more specific with me. Tell me where you've been.
Middle East would be places like Bahrain, Abu Dhabi, which is in the UAE. Mm-hmm. I never worked in Dubai, but it's right there. And Asia is like anything from China, Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia. there's some spots where there's this little circuit out there basically, and you get to know people, you know, and if you're cool, they'll call you up for some work, man. And so it's been a lot of fun.
Yes.
Yeah. It's been an adventure. I never really could travel. Well, I probably could have traveled, but I didn't think I had the money for it back when I was younger. So this has kind of sufficed a little bit of that too, for sure, man.
Did you dream or want the guitar and music to be a way for you to see the world? Like, did you think about that when you were young?
No, that just kind of ended up, you know, you discover these things. Like I said, you learn what it's like to do a gig. You learn what it's like to play in a theater show or something. Like, I didn't know stuff like that existed. I didn't know you could see the world with your instrument like that. Like, I kind of wanted that. That was my dream. Actually, my dream, I think, was to play for some kind of major artist kind of thing and just be that background dude. That's kind of been my kind of pseudo kind of dream about it, you know.
Be like the
like I want to be a part of the scene, but I don't need all that. I need the money, of course, but
the solid gig.
Yeah, I don't need all the other stuff, and I just enjoyed playing, you know. So, yeah, if that even answers your question. Okay.
No, man, yeah, it does. Now, how did you first get into playing? Because you said your family was into other things.
My mother, you met her the
Yes.
other night. She's used to play classical piano, and she was studying and doing like we were living in Alabama, I believe, at the time. My father was in the Army, and I remember going to her music classes in her college. I think it was like a junior college or a community college style thing. And, you know, they play all this classical stuff, you know, and do that whole scene. And I'd play with my little toys and stuff in the background. And I used to do lessons probably with her or someone she knew or something. And then it went from that to like singing in the hairbrush and putting on shows, you know, for the family and shit. And one day I was about 14, and I was at the neighbor's house. And he was into metal and all that. He had an electric guitar, and I seen him bend the strings. I was like, man, that's so cool. I was like, wow. I was like, wow, that's cool. And we had an old classical, and I just started messing around with that and picking out tunes, you know, figuring them out by ear and having fun. And then we moved to California, and that was an eye-opener. And from Alabama to California, and I started high school there. And I was like, I need an electric guitar like Slash all of a sudden, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Of course.
And yeah, I just started playing, and I really got into it, man. It was a great escape for me as a kid. I you know, instead of learning Spanish in high school, I took guitar class. So my Spanish is terrible. You know, and I had a teacher early on. I met this guy, and he had college degrees and stuff. And he had a master's in guitar. You know, he did the same kind of stuff that we've kind of had to go through basically too.
Sure.
You know, the classical jazz but he was a jazz kind of dude, and he was probably my father's age or something. He's like he substitute taught our guitar class, and I was playing Diary of a Madman. We would pass around songs. The guitar class was the best learning experience for me because you'd be in there with, I was like a freshman or something. And you got the senior guy that knows all these metal tunes, and you just showed each other tunes, man. And you just learned the old-fashioned way, kind of, I guess, if that's what it is. And it was a lot of fun. Right. Anyways, I was playing Diary of a Madman, and he's like, that's Leo Brower, study number 7. I forget which one it is, actually.
And you were like, no, it's Randy Rose.
Yeah, I was like, that's Randy Rose. He's like, let me see your guitar. And I had a nylon string, you know, like what I brought here. And like... he started playing the Leo Brower thing. I was like, wow. He's like, I give lessons at the Girls and Boys Club or something.
Whoa.
$20 or something. So I spent my summers learning with this guy. And I do remember him saying, you can use this as a tool to make money, you know, like all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
He'd point to his guitar. You can use this as a tool to survive. And I was like, wow. I was like, that's... I was already sold before that, but I was like, that's what I want to do.
That's what opened up your eyes to...
Yeah, and that's basically, I guess, what I've been struggling to do for the last 30-something years, 20 years, however long it's been.
Tell me about it, man. It's.
You got to cut me off, too, now. See, now I got the...
Bro, no, this is about just talking and about sharing. So it's like, yo, this is great. When you wind up is often when an hour, 2 hour, 3 hour podcast goes flying by, you know. Nice. Now... It's an experience to fall in love with the guitar, but then to realize the potential of it being a money-making thing all of a sudden. is like, whoa, you know, I can
Not like just a money making thing. More for me, like you said, like did you dream of traveling the world through your guitar? Like
right.
It's for me, it's everything now. Of course, at this point, you know how that is.
Right.
And
Right.
But yeah, back then I was like, how do you make a living doing this? He even offered me, the same teacher said, why don't you get a school teaching at this little music shop? He's like, you can teach lessons there. And like looking back, I was like, no, I can't do that. Like I was like, I'm not worthy. I had this thing for many years where I was like, I thought you had to actually practice a bunch before you joined the band and all that stuff. So I spent a lot of years, practicing. This guy would show me little classical pieces and I would just visually copy them,
Yes.
Later to find out what they really were, at school and all that stuff. And yeah, it was just a lot of fun for me, man. And I was like, if I could do this. The other thing I learned working for my family is the job I had in the tile business it's not a bad job. And you could make good money in the USA doing construction work still, as opposed to overseas. But I got some other stories about it. But so like I learned early on, I didn't really like the job. It was just available and I made good money, man. I was like making like $15-16 in like high school. My buddies were like, damn, you're making money. But I was working all the time, and it was, for me, it was a miserable thing. I wanted to be enjoying my time. I wanted to play guitar. Tile just trashes your hands, And so I learned early on that if you're going to work, I was like, shoot, I spend about, 15, 12-hour day when it's done with my 1-hour drive. And, when I get home, I'm exhausted. I'm like, whatever job you have, you should try to enjoy it so that it's not a job, I guess. I kind of had that realization around my high school years.
Sure.
And of course, music. I'm like, if I could figure out how to make that my life or, somehow a job, which I didn't know exactly what that entailed at the time, but I was like, sure, that's for me, man. So, yeah.
We're going to take a pause here with Mr. Patrick Chavez. And we're back. So, Patrick, tell me a little bit about, first of all, the trajectory of where you went, from playing guitar and in the summers taking guitar classes at YMCA.
The Girls and Boys Club.
The Girls and Boys Club.
Let's not confuse it.
But from there you went to, university. You went to schooling after that?
Yeah, from there I started just playing a bunch. I moved up to Northern California in Humboldt County. And they had a great music scene up there. I was just starting, how old was I? I was probably like 20 years old, 21. And it's a beautiful place, and they got a very cool cultural scene. They got everything from calypso bands to samba bands, jazz, you name it. It's got a really cool scene there. And I ended up going to school there, getting a bachelor's degree in classical and I guess, or just basically in classical guitar. But Humboldt was a great experience. And then from there, I moved out to Reno, trying to get into a bigger city, see other places. So I've gone out and did the whole break into the music scene thing in Reno, which it took me like a year before I got my first gig, I think. But that was a really cool place too, actually. It reminds me of, there's some similarities with Albuquerque and Reno too. But they had a really great music scene. They had an amazing faculty at the University of Nevada, Reno, and a cool scene, man. When I showed up, I had some friends from Humboldt that were there. They just had a great thing. It was like a step up in the music scene for me. And I was really into trying to play jazz and all that crap back then. So they had it there, and it was a great experience there. And I ended up getting a master's degree there. And I remember, I think the whole reason I got a master's degree was because that teacher I had at the Girls and Boys Club, he had a master's degree. So I was like, okay, you can get a degree in this, and somehow that's going to secure you a job somewhere.
A position, yeah. And so, what has having a master's degree in guitar done for you?
Well, we don't want to talk about the debt. Maybe that's one thing it's definitely done.
Here's the question: is 45 years old? Are you still paying off your student debts?
Yeah, of course. Well, yeah, I'm supposed to be. Yeah, I'm paying them off actually now. So. It comes and goes with the payoff thing.
So yes.
I have a debt from that stuff. I did, but I chose not to work, and I really wanted to focus on my time at school.
Which at the end of the day, you're going there for a reason, and you really ought to fully envelop yourself within the process of being a student if you're working 40 hours a week and then trying to be a student on top of
Doing tile work too, which I was actually.
It's not the way to go, kids.
Which I will. Well, you got to do what you got to do, man. There's much worse
it's the reality.
situations
And
than
what
that.
you just said
At least I had that trade because I used to do that while I was getting my master's. I'd be like grouting a floor, running down and trying to teach a student. But the other cool thing at UNR is I was able to teach. So it wasn't like I was a student. It was like
in doing your master's degree, they allowed you to have students.
Yeah, I forgot what
undergrad, right?
Yeah, I forgot what it was called. I was adjunct faculty.
Right.
So basically, I got like some grants to help pay for the school and stuff, which is really cool, man. Great school. And like I used to, if you weren't like the serious music student, I would be your guitar teacher. And so it was a great experience for me. And after, I've done the whole music store teaching from everyone from, someone that's 60 something years old to a little kid. So
right.
I've done the whole thing too.
So how did you end up going on the road? What was that? Where were you at
when I was living in Reno? I basically would do every gig that I could possibly do.
Which is recommended, by the way, to all of you young aspiring musicians, is take any gig that comes your way, not just because you have to eat, but also because you learn a lot from it.
It wasn't about eating back then. It was about how, I must have this experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
this is what
you got to learn.
That's what we're supposed to be doing.
Every single aspect of it.
I had a teacher tell me that too, and jazz instructor. He's like, never turn down a gig. He had some gig, and someone was like, "Well, I can't do it." He's like, "Never turn down a gig."
It's like the only time you turn down a gig is when you have another gig.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good reason right there.
Yeah.
So, I did all sorts of gigs there in Reno, and I ended up kind of in the casino circuit. And I went out to, I don't think I ever played in Vegas. I went and checked Vegas out a few times. It's really far from Reno. People think it's like, oh, you go to Vegas all the time. It's like, nah, it's like an 8 to 10 hour drive or something. Yep. There's another place called not Laughlin. I've been to Laughlin too. Anyways, I was doing these gigs like that. And in those bands, we would play a lot of the stuff like the My Girls and Temptations and Wilson Pickett's, and like a newer kind of song would be like a Timberlake song or something like that, for an R&B kind of stuff. And then there was rock style bands, old blues dudes. And I was like, it was fun, but you never knew who you're going to play with. And you're entering this work realm all of a sudden where dudes are like there to get paid, you know what I mean? And it was a different scene. It was a cool scene. It's what I wanted. But I was like, man, I should be somewhere exotic. Like if I'm here in Reno, and Reno is a beautiful, great place. Thinking sometimes about moving back there, other these places I used to live. But at the time, it wasn't enough for me, and I was like, I got to get out of here. I need to see the world, and this is,
Yeah.
And so I ended up getting a job years after that. I was like, I should be somewhere exotic if I'm going to do this kind of work. Cruise ships. I knew about cruise ships. I've never done one. I should be somewhere cool and experiencing my life and getting out of town and having fun. Because it started off in Reno, the trajectory was up, and playing cool gigs and playing with good players and all that. And then after a while, I just kind of stagnated, and I was like, I got to get out of here. There's only so much you can do. I've heard, maybe Albuquerque's got a similar thing. The ceiling's only so high.
I think most cities have that experience, and a lot of musicians can attest to that. That as you move around, even in the big cities, sometimes you hit the ceiling of where you can get or what you have. So you move elsewhere for that refresh, that reset button. You know?
I mean, I could have, if I was really hardcore, I guess I would have gone to LA or New York or something.
Right.
There's also a part of, living your life. And I used to be into nature, rock climbing and all. It doesn't go well with guitar playing. Not recommended for everyone, but
tiling and rock climbing.
Very inspiring for music, though, for sure.
Yes.
So, I ended up getting gigs overseas, and the long story short, and I went to Taiwan and Singapore. And I found this on that. That Musicians Classified thing? I don't know if you ever used that before. Yeah. It's run out of LA. Not the Facebook one. That one's pretty big now, though, too. You used to have to call up and listen to ads or whatever. I don't know. That was before my time on it. But I got on that website, and they're like looking for, this company was starting something to put bands in Asia. Yeah, we went to, played at 5-star hotels.
Wow.
In Taiwan, Singapore, South Korea. Great places, man. I always wanted to go somewhere where everything was different. And I've definitely got a chance to do that in the last 10 years, basically. It's been 10 years now.
Wow.
Of doing that stuff. And met a lot of great musicians and people from different, I was so into my school thing. And like, I look back upon myself and my attitude and what I was like. I'm like, kind of want to slap myself sometimes, but, it's a work in progress. I'm sure we all know. And like, I'm so much more open. I got exposed to amazing vocalists for one thing, gospel musicians where I was like, wow, I didn't even know that was going on. And they're like, yeah, it's normal for them. And so there's a lot of stuff. It's really musicians from all over the world, good, bad, ugly, and all that stuff.
Every gig is an experience, right?
Yeah.
Every opportunity is something beautiful to learn about us as human beings, because at the end of the day, even though playing guitar is what we do, or doing what we do is what we do, you learn about how similar we are all as human beings, I think, right? And like, I don't know if you've had I'm sure you've had the same experience about traveling around and meeting people in Asia and in the Middle East of how much our tendencies are alike,
Yeah. Well, especially with the whole internet thing, there's a big common scene that seems to be a more social scene that emerging. It's like a lot of things are the same, I guess, in a lot of part of the world. I mean, as far as what this modern, what do we call that?
It's almost like a collective consciousness, right?
Yeah.
Like the social media and everyone being connected through that and the waves hitting different countries.
Yeah, I mean, I go overseas and play the hits that are over there,
right.
and they know them just as well as they did. And that amazes me. I'm like, wow, they're into the same stuff, basically.
Oh yeah.
For better or for worse on that topic, but yeah, it is kind of a thing that happens. And I work in nightclubs usually, so that's usually my experience. You work like a lot of times 6 nights a week, 4 sets a night. So there's not your view of that country or town is based around this club you work in.
Now say that one more time just for people to understand that. How many sets and how much are you playing a night? How much you got?
6 nights a week, 4 sets a night, 4 45-minute sets, maybe a 15 to 30-minute break in between.
Yeah.
Like 9 to 1, 30 or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, a good experience, man. And that's the other thing I always wanted. I was teaching in Nevada, and I was like, man, how can I be a teacher if I don't have some real life experience? And there's some amazing players that have come in and out of Reno, which is the cool thing about it. But it was kind of a tunnel vision kind of place. Like you could only go so far, and you're only going to meet so many different people. And this has been an opportunity to do that. I'm like, how could you be a teacher unless you have some real life experience, basically? Something to, all my teachers did. So
I could not agree more and wish more educators would take that perspective. Not to talk down upon educators, but I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a passion and a love for teaching. I think you need someone that is passionate about it in order to teach. But in the same token of having someone that's passionate about it, you would also hope that they're passionate about trying to form the musicians of tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right? Like I can't tell you how many times in my university experience I had teachers try and diminish opportunities to play by saying I'm gonna lower your grade if you don't show up to this rehearsal, even though you told me about what you had going on many weeks ago, Just like, bro, I'm trying to make a living doing this, man. Like I quit being a waiter for this,
Well, the funny thing when I went to school, and the cool thing that I had thought, this was in Humboldt, mostly in Reno though, was like the teachers were out doing gigs. Like they weren't just teaching and going home and doing stuff. They were doing gigs, and the students, if you could hang, you're going to be playing in the band sometimes, They may need a keyboardist that night or whatever happens. They actually had their own band in Reno too. They had the Collective, a kick-ass jazz, like modern kind of jazz band.
Yes.
And and that was the thing for me. I'm like, I want to play gigs, I want to be with these guys somehow, and which didn't quite happen in Reno. But yeah, I mean, we all got a ways to go to get to where we want to be. But that was the cool incentive for me. It wasn't what you had just said. Teachers were out there doing gigs and stuff. And so it was a different thing in Reno. It was like, right. And they could hire you.
Yes.
And that's when I kind of learned it's not your degree or what it is, not who, anyways, yeah, it's who you know, basically, is what I mean by that.
Relationships.
Yeah. And you could have those with your instructors and go learn on the job. That was an amazing like concept to me. Like, so that was a cool thing and a way to get your feet in on that. I've had the positive and the negative experiences with school. By the time I finished my master's, I was just sick of the whole academic thing. Like, well, just the whole academic thing to me just seemed kind of silly in a way. I'd love to, it'd be great to go back to school, but like I couldn't afford it, and it'd have to have some kind of major purpose, like a position in mind.
Right.
Obviously, for me to do it, which is what happens, I think, to a lot of musicians that teach in that arena. So
walk me a little bit through playing in the Middle East. I know we spoke off air about it. It's not the funnest of topics to get into religion and stuff like that, but I mean, even just speaking about playing music in what's considered a dry country because it's mostly a Muslim population, and you being on 11-month contracts because of the fact that then the month of Ramadan happens within those months, in that time, I should say. What is that experience? I mean, because you're playing at a bar, you were speaking off air about how you kind of can't really talk about how you're working at a bar or even promote that because that's
on the radio thing. Yeah. There's a lot of, I guess as everywhere in the world, there's contradictions to certain things, but there's a lot of tourism over there, really. Not so much in Bahrain, but if you go to Abu Dhabi, the UAE, Dubai, there's a lot of hotels, and people come there to visit. They're going to stay. It's not like tourism like the great outdoors where you're bringing your trailer and stuff like I was doing this weekend, which is a lot of fun, I'll tell you. But like, there's hotels, restaurants, everything's in the hotel. You know what I mean? Come see our city, stay at our hotel. We have a band downstairs, that kind of thing. And Bahrain's more of a place where there's a lot of U.S. There's a lot of Navy dudes out there, a lot of Americans, which is very strange for me being overseas. You usually don't see a lot of Americans out, I guess. And like, a bunch of Navy dudes. So they have this population there that wants and kind of needs some entertainment. And especially in Bahrain, where I've been working, there's a lot of bands there. It's a really cool place to hang out. It's all built around entertainment, basically, in an odd kind of way. In a country where that stuff, I guess, doesn't happen. Like in some of the countries next door, they don't have movie theaters.
Right.
So I don't know. I think a lot of it must be based around tourists. But for me, it's a lot of fun. Those guys. They're just like us over here. They know all the same music and all the same stuff. And they like to, do things the same way we like to do them too, basically. But they do, and there's also the extremes with that whole religion thing in it. There's the people that are very into it and the people that are brought up into it, kind of not into it. There's the people that have been abroad that maybe aren't into it anymore. All the above. Same thing here in America, so... But it's a cool scene, man. It's been interesting. The Middle East, I have a lot more fun in Asia, I find, though.
Yeah?
Yeah, I can relate more, I think, with some of the mentality. It's oddly enough. With places like China, I can relate a lot more.
Interesting. Now, speak to me food-wise. I mean, what kind of, differences are you experiencing palate-wise from the Middle East to Asia? I mean, at least just from your personal taste, because as a musician, often, hopefully at least, the gig you're playing also feeds you. And sometimes they feed you just regular general food, but sometimes they're feeding you food.
There's a family joke where my cousin asked my mom if I've been sampling the cuisine. She's like, he loves to go out and eat food. They looked at her kind of funny and laughed. So, but yeah, man, not only have I been working like in these hotels like that, I've spent some time like living in Thailand. Like I put in 6 months on one trip. I've been there like several times. And Thailand, I've had work, I've done English teaching, all that stuff. And so eating the food, I think I went like several weeks just eating nothing but Thai food, in Thailand, and this is like eating the food at the school where they serve the kids, which could be like gooey pig ears and rice or whatever they're having that day, like weird stuff. That was an experience. So I kind of just got into it through having to get into it, saving money and all that stuff.
Being a musician in general.
Yeah, trying to be a musician overseas in another country. So there's a lot going on with that.
Yes.
Yeah, some amazing. I mean, there's been so many times where I'm like, I wish I could transport my buddies just to see this. I wish my parents could be here right now and share this meal, because this is like crazy what's going on right now.
Yeah.
And oftentimes cheap in Asia, at least in Asia. Middle East is kind of an expensive place, but yeah.
So playing the guitar, has it been I mean, playing the guitar can be very notorious. It can be an awesome experience. It can also just be a very unforgiving experience of just like playing in the corner of a restaurant and having, waiters countlessly tell you to come down and turn down, even though it's just you playing acoustically, It's like not that bad, but of course,
Yeah.
I mean, talk to the young,
Sure.
people out there, the young Patrick, what experience at 45 could you share with the students, or, what kind of advice, I should say, would you put forth for the future students of guitar and the future guitarists of tomorrow, I should say?
Well, not only guitarists, but just musicians, period, I think. Like, I don't know. I don't sure I have any words of wisdom, but like, just, be open-minded to try as much as you can. I mean, people used to say that, and I didn't quite understand what that means until recently, because I thought I was open-minded and realized you're kind of a dick. You had no business being a dick either. So like, be open-minded, like I said, and that whole thing is, if you're looking to entertain and really be a professional musician, I guess I should say, try every gig that comes your way. Don't be afraid to do stuff. And don't get upset if the people aren't really into it. I mean, you're getting paid to be there. I mean, that's the whole thing about being paid, I guess, is like, if someone's going to come to me and tell me to turn down and all that stuff, you're being compensated. You're there to do a job. I look at it very much like that. I was thinking about this earlier, about talking about this. But I had something better to say. Don't be, don't get too uptight about that stuff. Like, there's a difference between being an artist and someone that's going to go do a gig, I guess, basically. You still got to be an artist. You still can be an artist. You should be. And you should put your spin on everything. But you got to realize what you're doing, who you're there for, and what kind of music are you playing, and what does it demand of you?
Yeah. Yeah. Big time.
Basically.
Playing the gig.
Yeah. Right? So get as much experiences as you can do that. And don't get upset if things don't go your way, I guess. Like, I found myself, the bad thing about it, like you had asked me about this earlier, is I have found myself in situations where I was like, really needed the money and was just totally unhappy. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, this is ridiculous. But, you go through your low slumps and your good moments and all that. Yeah, totally. Hopefully there's more good moments.
Totally, man. Totally. So it's a question that I love asking people kind of towards the end of the conversation, but it's a general conversation question, and it doesn't necessarily ask you to define the word, but what does jazz mean in your life?
Ooh. A lot of things, I guess. Being as I put a lot of time into it and still struggle like everyone else.
Like all of us.
I don't know. Like, there was a whole thing when I was in school. They didn't want to call it the jazz department anymore. They think now it's the Department of Improvised Music or something like that.
Really?
Yeah. We had this whole thing in a class. This is the thing about school. It actually was really cool, but at the time I was so fed up with overanalyzing what is jazz, and if you had to buy a jazz album to show someone what jazz is, what album should give them? You know what I mean? It's a big thing, man.
Yeah.
And it's I guess what it means to me is it's a very organic growth thing. And it's not just something you can learn technically. It's something you have to learn technically, obviously, to play that kind of music and improvise.
Right.
And, but you have to grow as a person. I've taught a lot of lessons where I'm like, gosh, this student's just absorbing this stuff like a sponge. And then they go to try and play a song and they're still kind of, like just not swinging somehow or something. And and how do you teach that to someone? They have to live that themselves. This is a great quote about it. And this is kind of what jazz maybe means to me, or I could relate with it a lot. who was it? Johannes Hellborg, played John McGlaughlin, bass player. He said, if music and art is a reflection of life, I have to see if I can remember this. Yeah, if it's a reflection of life and your experiences, well, you must go out and live and experience to have something. It's something like that. You know what I mean?
Sure,
like he's
sure.
like, you got to
have to live a life to tell about what it's like to love and what it's like to lose love.
And that's what it's kind of turned into for me, jazz. And it's also just a great, you know, I'm addicted to playing stuff like everyone else gets and all that stuff. And yeah, it's a beautiful thing. But yeah, I always wanted to know, how do you improvise? How do you sit down? Like, we kind of sat down and you're like, play this. Like, thank God you played something, because I was like, I didn't know what to play. And
let's just fucking play whatever, man. It's all good.
Yeah. And like, I always wondered, how do you just sit down with someone you've never met and do that? And now I've done it several times. I didn't even meet some of the people in the band sometimes. And I played music with them and was like, okay, see you later. Like,
right. Did I catch your name? It's like, oh no, you know, but nice to play with you.
So I've my whole goal, I guess, when I was kind of learning music, was I always was fascinated by that. And then I learned about jazz, because I thought a lot of people do this, is they're like, if you can play jazz, you can play any styles, because it's very technical.
Right.
And basically I ended up kind of getting into jazz after that. People are like, well, how do you learn jazz? I'm like, well, you just should start learning all the songs, really. All the information is encoded in like the Bible of song. Yeah, it's got some encoded stuff in there.
That's a beautiful way to say it, man. So. And when people do want to get into it, it is that simple. It's just get into the music, get into it, you know, like listen to a lot of it. And then from there start digesting.
There is a lot of it.
There's so much.
That's the interesting part about that subject of jazz. It's a very big thing, man.
Huge,
especially now these days.
There's a great trumpet player in town named Bobby Shue, who I went up to one time at the Outpost and asked him, Mr. Shue, I'd love to sit down and get some lunch with you and pick your brain, have kind of a little lesson or something like that. He says, nah, I don't really have time for that. He's like, you want a lesson? He says, here's your first lesson. Learn some tunes. And the lesson that was continues to be the reason why I'll bust out some songs that I don't know, and we'll learn sometimes the rote, you know, by listening to them and learning the song by ear, or just by pulling up the sheet music and learning it. Because at the end of the day, you're right. You know, the code, the secrets
to
language
what jazz is all in those tunes, really. I mean,
and understanding, you know, what makes the chord changes with the melody and everything work so deliciously. That makes it like
was a great Joe. I had this Joe Pass video, and in the end, he's like coming out of this little show, and they're signing autographs and stuff.
Yeah.
And they're like, Joe, what would you tell the young generation? You know, blah blah blah. And he's like, learn some tunes. He's like, you can't get any chicks playing scales. And I was like, that is pretty much it, man. And there's a difference. Like, my family will be like, I get very technical in my practicing and stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes I spend too much time practicing and not playing with people. I've been very thankful for these gigs in the last 10 years, because I spend zero time practicing and all my time playing, and I become a different player, you know.
Man, playing, you know, I've often talked to a lot of musicians about this, but playing chops are different from practicing chops, you know?
Yeah.
And when I say chops, I mean that's lingo to refer to technique. The technique you are developing by practicing many hours a day is very different from the technique you develop from playing 4 to 5 to 6 days a week, 4 sets a night. You know what I'm saying? Well,
also playing with other musicians
in general, right?
Yeah, and in front of an audience especially, it just puts you in a position to where there's no
the spotlight,
the net's gone kind of thing. Yeah, and like, you either do or die with what you know. And it is what it is at the end of the day. You can either be happy about it or sad or whatever, but like, everyone feels that way, I think, at the end of the day. So and that's the cool thing about playing. Like, I would learn quicker, was my whole thing, on a gig than I could learn ever probably on my own, because you just had to. And all of a sudden the cool thing about playing with other people, and I've been way into that solo thing with the classical thing, and I actually love it, because you don't need anyone else around. You can just do it whenever you want. But when you do play with other people, your energy level changes, and you're forced to produce something on the spot that's, you know, that's nice, that's musical, you know, it means something, and it's, you know, for however you do that. And it's a different person playing the music in that kind of state of mind than it is at home, I guess, by yourself. In a way.
Totally.
In home, it can be very meditative, and I got to worry about anything else. But there, you have you kind of have a job to do and an obligation, depending on the genre and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And you're on the spot. I love it, man. It's a great feeling, especially if you pull it off.
Yes, man. So I appreciate you coming on the podcast, man, and I'm sad that you're leaving us so soon because, we just started to hang a little bit, and, I know you just started to work a little bit and start getting some gigs around town.
Yeah. Well, I'll probably be back.
Which has been great. Oh, I'm sure, man. In 11 months, though,
Yeah.
So we're going to wrap up with you actually performing a little bit of maybe some of that classical stuff that you've been working on.
Yeah, man, I got a little piece of it.
So we're going to play that tune out, and thank you so much, Patrick, for being on.
Thank you, Claudio.
I appreciate you, my man. This is beautiful to talk with you and just get the conversation started.
Yeah, that's
because
very
this
cool.
is one of many podcasts I'm sure we'll do in the future once you get back from Bahrain.
I got lots of stories, man.
I love it, bro. I love it, man. All right. Y'all listen to Our Talk Music. This is Patrick Chavez and Claudio Toulouse. We are out.
Thank you, bro.